Okay, looks like it's about that time, so I'm going to go ahead and get things started. First of all, welcome everybody. My name is Stephen Krutzfeldt. I'm a pre-sales engineer here with CDI, and I'm going to be your host today for our Laserfiche webinar. So today's webinar is going to be around managing AP in Laserfiche. If at any point you have any questions, please post them into the little questions box on the floating GoToWebinar window there. And the main things we're going to be talking about today, or rather the intended audience, is going to be the advanced Laserfiche users and administrators, people in operations, as well as accounting. We're going to begin by showing how we can bring invoices and other documents into Laserfiche as they pertain to accounts payable. We'll show how we can filter invoices by those that are not paid, as well as some other information using metadata. And then we will also show filing, adding that metadata and filtering, as well as reporting. So why Laserfiche? A couple different reasons. First of all, security. Security is obviously very important when dealing with any department, but especially accounting and accounts payable. So knowing who's going to have access to that information, who's going to be able to make changes, that all falls under the purview of security, which can be locked down very tightly in Laserfiche. Everything from the root folder level to your folders, subfolders, as well as the document and even fields and words on the document themselves, whether it be seeing through redactions or accessing specific metadata. All that can be tightened up in Laserfiche. Next, of course, is accessibility, because what good are your documents if you can't access them? So being able to organize these different AP documents in Laserfiche in such a way that they can easily be accessed, found, sorted, filtered. We're going to be taking a look at a couple of different options we have in that sense to show how you can very easily access not only the documents, but also the data around those documents. And of course, process automation. Depending on how many vendors or purchases you make each month or week, a lot of documents can be coming in. They can become very cumbersome. And so any way that we can lighten the load for your end users and automate some of those processes, the better. And with Laserfiche, there are a lot of opportunities for automation. And we'll look at a couple of those examples here today. So the first thing I want to talk about, though, is Quickfields. If you're not familiar with Laserfiche Quickfields, what it is a add-on piece of Laserfiche that allows you to scan in documents, and it will automatically extract data from the document that's being scanned in. A popular example that I see a lot of times in accounts payable is around doing check runs and paying invoices. That a lot of times there'll be a cover sheet with a specific number of invoices that are going to be paid, and then the checks as well as the invoices in that packet. So to be able to scan all those in and then extract the data is one way that we can automate some of that and remove the need for manually entering metadata. So we talk about batch processing, being able to scan in an entire packet of documents and let Laserfiche Quickfields automatically filter them out, sort them, and then file them where they need to go. We also have the ability to link this to any external tables or accounting software, meaning that if a invoice comes in or you are doing a batch of invoices or a check run, we can automatically do a query to your accounting software to see what that invoice number is, has it been paid, do the amounts match, and so we can actually do that query and make sure that we are then maintaining the integrity of the data for that payment run. And of course, as I mentioned before, this also has the ability to recognize the data automatically. What we're looking at here is just the user interface for Quickfields. We'll see that it's extracting different fields and automatically applying those to the metadata template. So that's its main purpose, is to extract that automatically and then make sure that you're not typing that in manually, but rather we're letting the system do that for you. So populating the metadata, and this can then in turn automate the filing process. So once it has been paid, does it go into a invoices paid folder with a year and month? We can do it that way. Or if we want to make sure that it's separated by vendor, that's another one that we see as well. So with that, let's go ahead and get away from the PowerPoint and jump into Laserfiche and take a look at some of these. So the first thing I want to take a look at is a little process that I came up with for, in case any of you are doing three-way matching for the packing slip, invoice, purchase order, things like that. We've got a lot of options, like I said, when it comes to automatically filing this information and then keeping track of what's been paid, what hasn't been paid, where our invoices are at, and being able to sort, filter, file, and report on that data. So we're going to start by just saying that we received a packing slip. Packing slip can be scanned into incoming scans directly, or sometimes what we see is in manufacturing, I always dealt with people who had a scanner on the shop floor. So when they got those packing slips, they would just scan it in. It would come into a network folder. That network folder is being monitored by import agent, and then automatically bringing those packing slips in to a filing location in Laserfiche. So we're just going to select some information like the vendor name, and you'll see that this is linked to an external table. So when I put the vendor name in, it will automatically show my vendor account number. This way we have that information in the accounting system and we don't need to do a separate lookup or have someone manually try to figure out what the accounting number is. That will automatically populate. We'll say the PO number is today's date, and this is the second one I'm doing today, so 428.2. And this is going to be a packing slip, so we don't need an invoice number or an invoice amount, and we'll give it today's date. So at the front of this, very simple auto file. When a new packing slip comes in, the system is going to automatically file it to a temporary location in finance for accounts payable and packing slips. So we see it went in there and it renamed it with the date, the type of document that it is, and the vendor. And we also have the PO number right here. And if it were an invoice, we would have the invoice number here also for easy reference. All of these columns are easily changeable. You can customize them to fit your daily activities. So nothing too brilliant there, but let's say the invoice comes in next, and the invoice is for the same order that packing slip was for. So we're going to give it CDI, and we're going to say the PO number was the same one, 428.2. This is going to be an invoice, and I'm just going to give it a similar number so we can keep track of them. Say the invoice amount was for $100 and today's date. So same thing's going to happen. It's going to grab it, recognize that it's an invoice, and move it to the AP folder and then the invoice location. So we now see that we have the invoice for CDI. But it actually did a little bit more than that too. So if we go ahead and look at the metadata here, we're going to see that there are a couple of little ones up here, like tallies for the tag and link. So our field is exactly how we set it up. It grabbed the vendor number, PO number, invoice, all that, but it also tagged it as matched, meaning that it found the corresponding packing slip for that order. And it went ahead and linked it for us too. That since it found that match, it showed that these two are related, meaning that we can then go in here, double click on that, and it'll take us directly to that packing slip. So we can see the packing slip for that order, that the two are linked together. And that goes the same for the packing slip as well. It's linked back to the invoice here. So what we can do then, so if you have a lot of these coming in, I wanted to try and paint the picture for you here a little bit. If you were scanning in our packing slips and we're using maybe Quickfields or some other way to automatically recognize that information, we can send it in, automatically put the metadata on it, and then have it kind of sit and wait for that match. Then when it finds something that does match, it'll go ahead and trigger it as such. That will then mean that when we're ready, we can go ahead and just do a quick search for invoices not paid, maybe invoices that are matched and not paid, and it'll give us that link. So then when we do our check run, we can actually go in here, and I guess I don't necessarily even need to open that up. We'll just go ahead and open up the metadata here and say that, you know what, this has been paid. And so we can simply mark it as paid right there. And then what we'll see it do is we go back to our invoices, we'll see that the CDI one has left. And then if we look at the packing slip, we'll notice that the CDI one packing slip left as well. What it's done, and this is just my example, we can have this go pretty much anywhere, but I went ahead and sent it to the vendors, to the vendor name, a year folder, and there we see the invoice and the packing slip. And what we can do here also is if we look at the metadata again, we can have a workflow that goes ahead and adds that paid date. So that way we have that information here also. And if at any point you want to link some of this to an external accounting system, we've done those integrations in the past. So you can start seeing the picture kind of come together here. So that's one way that we can take information and link it all together. Being able to sort and filter, we looked at the ability to search by unpaid invoices. We see how we have all that information being tracked and the use of metadata. Now, another piece I want to look at is we do at CDI offer another solution and system to recognize data automatically that's relatively powerful, and that's called Abby. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my different server here and go into my Abby FlexiCapture system. The way this is set up is it takes information very similar to what Quickfields is doing, except it's more for unstructured data. We recognize that every single vendor is going to have a different format of invoices and a different format of packing slips. They're always going to be different, same information, just in different locations on the document. So what Abby does is it takes a rather complex algorithm, runs it through so it can recognize and extract data from multiple, even dozens and hundreds of different types of invoices, and then send that information through to Laserfiche. So we're going to begin by telling it what type of document we're scanning in. So we're going to use invoices. And I'm just going to go ahead and create a manual batch here, but this is going to be very similar to what we talked about before, where all these can be scanned in from either a shop floor or a workstation. If one person is in charge of just filing these, we can have these scanned in to a network location that is then monitored by Abby and automatically bringing those in. We've got a lot of options when it comes to actually getting the documents into the system. Oops, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and just rename this batch quick so we can keep track of it. I'm going to go ahead and just load the images here. And I'm going to grab a couple of invoices. We'll just go with 3 for now. And what this is doing, a couple different things. It's running in the background, recognizing these. It knows that it's going to be invoices, and so it's going to be processing in the background exactly what we tell it to. So it's going to go through the recognition process where it says, all right, this is an invoice, so we are going to want invoice number, invoice date, maybe PO number. We want the vendor name and information as well. So it's going to go through all that recognition. The second step of this is kind of end user changeable. It depends on how involved you want to be, but the verification process basically says that if the level of confidence here for a specific document is below a certain threshold, we want to send it to a manual verification. And this could be set up on a verification station, is what they usually refer to it as. So this is like a workstation where someone can log in and see specific one-off documents where the system's not 100% sure that it got the right information. And so someone else can go in and say, yes, this is that's the correct invoice number, and then manually verify it. So that's what we mean when we say verification. And the last piece I have checked here is just export. And in this case, the export location is going to be Laserfiche, but we have customers who are exporting just XMLs and CSVs, just the data. Some want the data and the document both exported to another location. So depending on how much information you want to retain from these processes, it's kind of up to you. And the most important part here is the training piece. One very powerful piece about Abby FlexiCapture is the training capability, that when documents are manually verified at the verification step, it remembers that. It remembers that the data we wanted was found in this location for this document, for this vendor. So next time it sees that vendor and a document from them, it's going to look in that location, and it'll actually learn and become smarter and more accurate the more documents you scan in. And I've seen this happen in real time too. So enough of that. Let's go ahead and pop open one of our invoices and see how it did. Now, the first thing I just want to point out is that we have 3 different invoices from 3 different vendors, one from Laserfiche, one from Excel Energy, and one from MCCI. All of them are different. They have different the same information in different locations. So what we're seeing here is that it found the invoice number, even though it was listed as statement number. So a verification operator would go in and just hit enter and say, yeah, that's correct. The statement date or invoice date came up here as well. It's showing us exactly where it found it. If we want to adjust that, we can do that manually and move it around. That's how we would train it to say, yes, good job looking in this location, or maybe you want to expand it a little bit. That's how it's going to learn. Total amount also found that down below, and the total amount due on multiple pages, so it does recognize multiple pages, and it's able to bring those all up as well. And we also see that we caught the different line items as well. And the type of information and data that you want to extract using Abby is entirely up to you. There are lots of different options. If you just want to grab the invoice number and the amount total, that's totally fine. But if you want to grab even more, like subtotal, line items, things like that, it's pretty powerful in that sense as well. So then we go into Laserfiche, same thing. The first thing I want to kind of point out too is that it did recognize the vendor. I actually have this synced up with a vendor master, like an external table with a list of vendors. So it's able to, first of all, say that, oh, this is Laserfiche. They're on this street. It found the address, state, zip, all that information. And that's actually a very important piece of this, because once it recognizes the vendor, then it's going to remember that for each vendor, where is the specific data located for them. So it's actually an important step to have that link set up somewhere. But we can have multiple addresses and multiple different types of information for each one of your vendors as well. So don't think that, if you do have a vendor that has 6 or 7 different shipping locations or something, that you need to have several locations. You can actually have one vendor called Laserfiche, but have multiple different options for their addresses, and it'll recognize each one of those. But we see here that it found the invoice number right up here, even though it was in a different location from Excel. It found the invoice date. It found the total, although this one it turned red, which means it wasn't as confident. So that might be one that is manually verified. But it has no reason to be less confident, because it was 100% correct, 87,400. And then it also went through and grabbed the description, quantity, unit price, all this other information about the line items as well. As you can see, it's pretty good at recognizing those different fields. And I know there's probably no way that you can really 100% believe that I didn't go in beforehand and key this up so it recognizes it 100%. Yes, I have run the same documents through a couple times, but I can promise you that it does a pretty good job right off the bat recognizing these different fields. And a lot of times what I like to do is challenge our clients and say, if you're not sure if this would work for you or if Abby would be a good fit for your organization, why don't you go ahead and send me some of the invoices, examples of what you're running through, and see what we can do with that. And I'll put together a proof of concept and show you how well Abby can process your invoices and your documents for your organization. More than happy to do that. In fact, I enjoy it. So just look at the last one here, MCCI, same thing. Found the invoice number, found the invoice date, the total, and the one line item as well. So if all that's correct, the last step here is to just go ahead and export it. And as I mentioned, we have an integration with Laserfiche. So when we're finished with this, we can go ahead and just export to the one location that I have set up, i.e. Laserfiche. It'll take just a second to process those. So we should see these disappear. We'll be able to pop out to Laserfiche and see how that metadata tracks and how that's all being captured. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up our other server here. Expand that so you guys can see it a little bit better. These were the older ones. So let's go ahead and look at so that's my mistake. I gotta figure out where I put them. So what I'm going to do is, here's a little trick for you guys too when searching. You can always go into the advanced search, go by date, and look at what was created today. And we'll see that there were different documents. We've got our invoices here earlier that have the green on them. Those are the ones that I manually created, and I'm actually putting a different template on the light blue ones. These are the ones that came over from Abby. And the reason for that is because I'm capturing line item data on these, but I'm not capturing line item data on the others. So if we look at our fields here for MCCI, there was only the one line item, so maybe that's not a good example. But it grabbed the, well, incorrect vendor name. I should have corrected that. Invoice number, invoice date, and invoice total all came over, as well as line item information. Let's go ahead and look at the other examples. This might be a little bit better. So here we see Excel Energy. That's the vendor name. Invoice number, invoice date, invoice total, all captured as metadata. And then also split out our different line items as well. So we have the description and the quantity. We have, well, quantity for Excel Energy isn't really here, but what we see is the total price and description for each one of those line items. So each one of them is blocked off in their own area, so it's all contained. So if that's something that you do want to keep, you certainly can. We'll go ahead and look at the last one as well. So here we go, Laserfiche, quantity, unit price, total, etc. So of course, accounts payable, that department, there's a lot going on. It's a lot of work, a lot of paper, a lot of business processes. I understand that today would probably not, of course, completely change your world, but I hope I at least started the conversation about some of the ways that we can automate, some of the ways that we can take Laserfiche applications and maybe automate some of your business processes, or reduce the number of fields that are being filled out by hand. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and open it up for any questions that we have right now. If you have questions, go ahead and post them in the box. And also, I've got a list of a couple of different resources that you can look at as well if you have additional questions. Laserfiche Answers is the big one. Chances are if you Google any questions Laserfiche related, the first hit you're going to get is something from Laserfiche Answers. Usually someone else had the question first, and there's a very, very active Laserfiche community out there who's always monitoring these and answering these pretty quickly. Also, the Solution Exchange is another good one, and Cities Digital personally has the Peak Portals documents and a lot of different white papers and help docs to answer any questions you may have. Other than that, I do want to reiterate that if you think that Abby FlexiCapture for invoices is something that you could see using internally, let me know. I'd be more than happy to put together a proof of concept and talk to you about what that licensing looks like and how all of that works together. Similarly with Quickfields, I know we didn't necessarily take a look at a demo of that today, but if it sounds intriguing, we can set you up with to have a conversation with the account manager about that as well. Or if you're just looking for options, if you want to talk to one of our consultants here about a business process that you have today that you think could be a little more automated, a little less stressful. In fact, just the other day, I had a conversation with a client who was looking to, they said, you know what, Stephen, we have a lot of different documents coming in, and we love that everything's auto-filed and it links to our external tables. We have drop-downs, but filling out all of these metadata fields, it becomes cumbersome. It's a full-time job just to fill out metadata fields sometimes. And so that's when we start the conversation about, well, how can we use different integrations? How can we use DocuSign integrations, or Salesforce or other CRM integrations, or maybe Abby or Quickfields? That way you don't need to manually fill out all that information because it resides somewhere else first. So how can we extract that? And we've got a lot of different options of how we can do that. So any way that we can make things a little easier for you, let us know and we'll give you some options. We'd be more than happy to do that. I'm not seeing any questions come in. Did I do a good job of covering everything and answering all your questions already? All right. Well, sounds good. Okay. Thanks, Luke. Well, if there are no questions, then I will let you guys go. Everybody continue to stay safe, stay sane. Like I said, please reach out with any questions. I think the last slide might even have my information there. So Stephen.Krutzfeldt, CDI support, or www.cdi.support with any questions or issues, or if you'd like to discuss anything that we talked about earlier. Also know that this was recorded, so that will be posted to our YouTube channel probably by the end of the week. So if you want to revisit some of that or maybe review any of the topics that we discussed today, that will be available. Thanks, everybody.